Hi, Ann Sieg here again. Why eBay? A shopper's perspective. There are three essential ingredients for success as an eBay seller. Let's dive in together on this. They are number one, the right mindset. Number two, a thorough understanding of the eBay PayPal ecosystem and how to navigate it. Number three is access to tools and training to help you optimize your product listings and increase your sales volume. By following the information in the e-commerce arbitrage system, you'll be ahead of 80% of all eBay sellers. Translation: higher exposure, more traffic, more sales. So let's talk about the first ingredient, cultivating the right mindset. Based on the first of the three essential ingredients for success, business or hobby, cultivating the right mindset. You may have been drawn to this eBay thing because the idea of working from home without having to go out and get another job really appeals to you. Couple that with the fact that so many people are making money for their very first time online that you can actually see yourself earning your first dollar online too. It's exciting. Though the concept of drop shipping looks simple enough and the methods are basic and uncomplicated, remember, it's a business. You're the boss and you get to make the decisions, but the buck also stops with you. It's a good idea to start thinking about your eBay dropship business as a bona fide business rather than a part-time hobby, even if you can only devote a few hours to it in the beginning. I'm going to dive in here to share an overview of what I have found to be the most powerful principles in establishing the e-commerce arbitrage mindset and to be able to set up your inner game for maximum success. I'm going to start by sharing with you the story of two of my sons' first online business. And as you look at this picture, it's this son here on the right. He's my eldest son, and his name is Isaiah. This is his next younger brother, which is my middle son, and his name is Rob. So when Isaiah was 16 years old, and Rob was 12 years old, Isaiah approached me and he said, "Mom, Rob and I are going to start an eBay business." Now, you have to realize I encourage business for my sons, primarily because my husband and I have run many businesses together as a husband and wife team. So it's only natural for me to encourage that for my two, or I should say all three of my boys. And also for the fact that I actually homeschooled my three sons. And as part of their homeschooling experience, they were to run businesses while in high school, even in junior high. And so it didn't surprise me too much when Isaiah made this announcement to me. So we got it all set up and he said, "Mom, basically, we're going to order stuff. It's going to come to our house. I'm going to list the items on eBay, and then Rob is going to pack them. And Mom, guess what? You're going to run Rob to the post office." So our house became a hub of activity as my boys started their eBay business. And so they decided to specialize in memorabilia sorts, as you can see here, Lord of the Rings, and they called their company Worldwide Weapons. They even had some marine memorabilia and that type of products. Well, as you can see, as I've described this, they did it for how most people think of eBay. And that is, you buy the products up front, and then you personally have to pack and ship the products out to your customers. That's how my boys did it, and I call that the old way, especially after having been introduced to the dropship model just about a year ago at the time of this recording. And what refreshing news that was to hear that we didn't have to buy the products up front. We never had to touch the products physically. No running to the post office. It sounded like a dream come true. And so after having been introduced to this business model, I shared it with my husband, Brian. And that's a picture of him right there. In my company called 80/20 Marketing, it's a business partnership with my husband and my eldest son, Isaiah. There's the three of us that own our company together. My husband does all the paper pushing, while my son and I do kind of the out in front work as the marketing team. But anyways, I introduced this concept to my husband, Brian, and he was actually very intrigued. He said, well, I still have my eBay account, and this actually sounds like fun. Now, this was in November of 2013. So like I say, a year ago at the time of this recording. And I said, well, furthermore, I think this would be an awesome concept for you to prove for the fact that the bulk of my audience, my customers, are baby boomers, people born between 1946 and 1964, which my husband and I happen to fall into those demographics. So I told him, I said, Brian, so many of our people are, well, kind of slow on the computer. And Brian, you're really slow on the computer. So my theory is, if you, who are really slow on the computer, hunt and peck with that keyboard, if you can do this successfully, then pretty much anyone can do this. Well, he decided to do it more so because he flat out thought it'd be a lot of fun. So he went through the training, and lo and behold, he started to have sales success. You should have seen him coming in my office, smiling broadly, because these were his very first sales he had ever done online. Now, my company, we've done over $20 million in sales online, but that's been mostly my son and I. We do the front-end marketing. My husband, no, he does the accounting and bookkeeping. So for him to experience this and to do it all by himself, just by following some training and tutorials, he felt pretty proud of himself. And he started to realize this was a self-sustaining business because the cost of the training was so minimal. And he actually recouped the cost of that training with just one sale. It was a pizza toaster. Another insight that he absolutely loved, he said, Ann, this is so amazing. I didn't even have to talk to anybody. He just thought it was the coolest thing. All he's doing is listing items to sell, people buy them, and he ships it off to them without him having to touch or ship any product personally. He loves it. That's when I knew I had a winner and I was ready to take it to the masses. And we've seen so much success for so many people since that time. Now, I'm going to give you some principles, some tips that I think are going to really help you stay in the game. And staying in the game, you know where it starts? Up in your head. That's why I call it the inner game. So tip number one is to begin with the end goal in mind. So as you can see, this soccer ball going through the net, scoring, right? That's what you want to do. You want to score a sale. And another sale, and another sale, onwards up to, maybe $10,000 a month in profit. That is all doable and within reach for you. But I want to encourage you right now to consider why you're doing what you're doing. More so than a financial goal, it's really about what those financial goals are going to bring you. So that's why in your back office, I have you fill out the Dreamcasting survey. You see, money's just a vehicle. Money is a means to get to what you want, solving problems in your life. It may be you have a child who has attention deficit disorder or any other kind of genetic disorder or learning disability or an illness, whatever it may be, and that you are driven, of course you're driven as a parent, to take care of the needs of your child. Or it may be you're taking care of your parents as a baby boomer. You've got aging parents, they've had to move into your home, and your role and your duty as a caregiver has just increased tremendously, and you need to offset some of the costs and the burden of doing that. Maybe hire a housekeeper to come in and clean your house once a week. But you have to have some kind of end goal in mind for why you're doing what you're doing. Now, I'm going to share a little story with you of what became a very huge motivating goal for me. What you see in front of you is a letter that my husband gave to the very last employer he has had, which dates back to September 7th of 2006. You see, that month was the very month that we incorporated 80/20 marketing, that being with my husband and my eldest son. It was during that summer, starting in July, that my son and I took our business to a whole nother level. We started at $2,000 profit per month and scaled that to $90,000 a month in 3 months. And it was at that point that I was able to say, Brian, really, seriously, it is time for you to come home. And that was actually my big goal that I had established for myself back in 2002. That was the reason I had started at that time. I was in a direct sales company, and my big goal and ambition was to make enough money that I could bring my husband home and that he would no longer have to go out. At that time, we actually had a business, that being in 2002, but where he worked very, very long hours out away from the home. I guess, call me selfish, but I wanted my husband home with me. As it turns out, he's a really, really good cook, and he loves making meals for me. So it's been a great win-win. But all to say, I like his company, and I wanted to have him home with me. That was my ambition. And I was highly, highly motivated. You see, what happened, we had a windshield replacement business. It lasted for 12 years. And then a law came out in the state of Minnesota that basically obliterated all the little mom and pop shops, including ours. It was a 2.5-year death spiral. Very, very painful because my husband loved his business. And he ended up having to take up all sorts of odd jobs. We're basically turned upside down on our heads. And he ended up working out at the Minneapolis airport, fueling jets. Not a very pleasant job, especially when it's 20 below zero, which it hits that in the middle of winter in Minnesota. And he also worked over the weekend at a home for disabled men, brain injured men. So over the weekend, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, he would work upwards of 30 hours with about an hour's worth of sleep in between. It was a little bit scary, I won't kid you not. And I'll never forget, it was that summer. He was leaving the house, going from one shift to the next, with just being able to come home, take a quick shower. I handed him his lunch, and out the door he went to work the night shift. And I'll never forget looking at him as he left the door, and I said, Brian, I'm going to get you home. I'm going to get you home. And I did, because I was very, very highly motivated and driven. And you may need that same kind of drive and ambition as well, because it is going to take some work to build your e-commerce business. I'm going to tell you straight up, it's going to take focus and dedication. You know what? Kind of on the order even of when you raise a child, it takes focus and dedication. Same thing with your business. Your business, it kind of becomes like your baby. So anyways, all to say, this was a great victorious moment in our family when we closed the door on that. And he's never had to seek an outside job ever again. We're incorporated. We've made over $20 million online. But it was this steadfastness to the end goal that we had in mind. All right, tip number 2. It's a business, not a hobby. As you can see, here's this gentleman proudly standing at the door. He's a proprietor, and he's letting the world know he's open for business. You know, I've worked with virtually hundreds of thousands of people over the last 10 years around the world, an international audience, and I've seen a lot. I've seen an awful lot as a trainer, as an author, as an educator. And at the end of the day, it's staying power that gets people to the finish line. You've got to set up some new regimens. You have to get dialed in to what it means to hire yourself, to be the CEO. And when things aren't going well in your business, you know who you're going to have to hold accountable to that? The guy or gal in the mirror. It's going to be you. And I have to say, it's kind of a challenge for a lot of people as they shift from an employee mindset into a business mindset. And a lot of people who have only been employed don't fully grasp it. It's like, gosh, how I would just love to show up and have someone tell me what to do. Like maybe even bark at me some orders. Hey, 10 listings up at the end of the day, or you're fired. In other words, accountability. A lot of people actually do not know how to hold themselves accountable. So what's worked really well for me is you tap into what motivates people the most, and it tends to be pain over pleasure. While we think of ourselves as pleasure seekers, we get a little bit more motivated into action when we have a fear of pain. Let's see, things like losing your house. That might kick you into really high gear. We actually have a member, Chris Luna. He was on the verge of becoming homeless, but for the information that I presented to him on e-commerce arbitrage. It saved his family. But I need to tell you something. As soon as he came into the training, dirt was flying all over the place. In other words, he zipped through that training. Man, he threw up some listings. Is this thing really going to work or not? And by golly, they did. He made 5 sales in his first 48 hours because he was very driven and motivated. Now, if life is all cushy and you don't really have a fire under your rear, you might kind of lollygag. And that's going to hurt you. So take a moment to really get focused on what does it mean to own your own business. Hobby is kind of you do it as you please when you're in the mood, not a business. Think of it this way. If you ever had a newborn baby, you actually didn't have the option about whether you wanted to change the diapers or not, or feed the infant. Because the baby would let you know. The baby would cry and scream until the baby was taken care of. That's kind of like what a business is. It's a baby that needs its diapers changed. It needs to be burped and fed and all that. Otherwise, I tell you what happens. It dies. The business dies. It will wilter away to nothing if you don't take care of it on a daily basis. See, babies do need to be fed all day long, don't they? You don't get to have Sunday off for your baby, do you? No, you don't. And here's the challenge. If you decide to take a chunk of time off from your business, here's going to be the problem. That initial emotional excitement you had when you first started, it's going to be different if you lay down that baton. Let's say, oh, I'm just going to take a break for 3-4 days. Let's say you do that. You chance that. You risk it. And then you're looking at day 4 and 5 and you go, oh, man. Ugh. All of a sudden it feels like a heavy because you don't have the same emotional excitement that you had when you first started. This is why you never want to let the baton down. Not until you've reached a level where you're truly successful. Because you're going to be swimming uphill otherwise. You're going to run that risk of having to rebuild back to that initial emotional excitement. And that's kind of a tall order. So don't do that. Stick with it on a daily basis, just like you would with the baby. Let's move on to tip 3. Accept that there are phases in your business development. So as you look at others and you maybe compare, which we're prone to do as humans, it's only natural. Oh, how come she? Oh man, look at him. Just know that there are different phases of business and you want to accept that. So here's what they are. There's the learning phase, there's the implementation phase, there's the check and adjust phase, and then we have cycle back again, or sometimes called rinse and repeat. Now, the learning phase and implementation phase tends to be the most arduous and where most people fall to the wayside. All you have to do is look at sports as an example, all the way on up to the Olympics. And there's a saying, business is the sport of non-athletes. So, just watch the people at the gym. Oh, probably the best time of year to do this exercise is January. And what happens in January? Oh, it's fresh beginnings. I'm going to lose some weight this year. Yeah, I'm going to sign up for a gym membership. And I always just kind of smile to myself every January because the gym is more full. All of a sudden, there's a whole slew of new members. And then I always know and think to myself, yeah, come February, come March, we'll be back to our usual numbers. It's that whole kind of honeymoon phase, right? You kind of get infatuated with it. Oh, I'm going to get fit. Yeah, I'm going to buy a new outfit, new tennis shoes. I'm going to show up. I'm going to look spiffy, and I'm really going to be dedicated. Look at me. I have my notebook, and I'm going to track even. And then you fall out of the honeymoon phase because you kind of hit the grunt phase. And now it's just not so exciting, and you decide to quit. That same dynamic happens in business. So just knowing that in advance and know that that happens to the bulk of people, don't let it happen to you. So the fact of the matter is, everybody has to go through the arduous learning phase and the arduous implementation phase. It's just a given, okay? So you want to kind of like buckle up, be a grown-up and go, got it. I can handle that. Now, knowing that we have that behind us and you're going to go through that phase, and by the way, that's going to vary dramatically from one person to the next because there's a lot of variables at play here. One person is a whiz at the computer, another person not. One person has 40 hours to work their business, another person only 15 hours to work their business. All sorts of factors, right? So, but we're going to get that behind us. We're going to accept the fact that we get through that phase, and then we're on to the almighty check and adjust phase. So let me make this really direct and tangible for you. You're going to be putting up what are called listings on eBay. Now, a listing is akin to a sales letter. It's got the title, which is like a headline. It's got the description, which is the offer. Tells people what they're going to receive, what the benefits are. And then we have the images. And the images are basically that people, they buy with their eyes. Okay? Now, doing a really quality bang-up listing, it's a skill set. It's a skill set that you're going to learn and develop until you get really, really good at it. Okay? As part of that, you now need to realize that you don't just throw up listings and then forget about it. No, if you see that the sales aren't generating as quickly as you'd like, you need to go back to that listing and we do something called optimize, check and adjust. We maybe change the title a little bit. We do a little more research on our keywords and decide to test out some new keywords that you found out get a lot of traffic. You know what? You decide after going through a couple more trainings, you're going to work on that product description a little more. And, you've started to learn how to do your own photos. So now you take your own photos and load those up. Swap them out with the less inferior photos. That's called check and adjust, and it's inescapable. This is the pathway to champions. They check and adjust. Sometimes, just like in the sports world, they access a coach, a sports coach. Same holds true here. You have the potential to access a coach, a professional coach inside our community. That's the check and adjust phase. After you've mastered that, you go back. You go on to another, more advanced learning phase in your business, and a more advanced implementation phase, and another layer of check and adjust. And that's the cycle of life and business. So let's head on into a little schematic that I created that describes the learning process. This is really important. So what we have at the top is preparation, mindset. Now, this is something that actually happens over a lifetime. You see this on programs. I love to watch business programs. So my husband and I watch Shark Tank and The Profit. And it's always so intriguing and fascinating listening and watching people. And you know how that is? You can sense a more mature mindset. They're just a more developed person. Oh, things like they know how to take responsibility for all their actions, good and bad, and they own it. Versus someone who's always playing the scapegoat and, yeah, so-and-so is to blame for this, and oh, I knew it was my mom and dad who are to blame for it. It seems like everyone's to blame except themselves. And just that little segment of character attributes, just one of many, all factor into having a really healthy mindset that I liken that to, garden, soil. You have soil that is completely devoid or stripped out of minerals. It's just dead soil. And you try to plant something in there, and it just doesn't grow. Even when you put water and sun on it, the soil has been depleted. Okay, sometimes people call that a poverty mindset. All they see is why things aren't going to work out, especially for them. And they're kind of like the proverbial Charlie Brown story. Who was that? Was it Linus? Maybe I'm thinking of Eeyore from Winnie the Pooh. Eeyore. He always had a great cloud over his head. It was always raining over poor Eeyore. The world just never looked bright for poor Eeyore. Okay, that's some people. It's never going to work for them. Look at me, I'm just stupid. Nothing ever works for me. They're just beaten and downtrodden. And they need to have their mindset completely reshaped into fertile soil. This is something that you actually commit to for a lifetime. And I have to say, everybody needs it. Everybody needs it, and they especially need it in business, because I'll tell you what, business is purely a grown-up space. There's actually no room for babies in business. Nobody wants to hear it. Nobody feels sorry for a whiner or someone who pities themselves and all. There's just no room in business for it. It's more of it's a tougher world. Just gonna call it like it is. You know, the people who get ahead, they just kind of bootstrap and buck up, and they do it, and they suck it in, and they don't grumble, and they just plow through, and they have sweat on the brow, and they accept that. So I want you to be really mindful of that, because it is oh so key to the rest. When you input, the next phase here, inputting simply means data. Data is coming into the brain, shooting right up the, let's see if I can remember the terminology at the brainstem there. Reticular activating system. Not going to go into all of that teaching right now, but you basically, through your executive brain, sometimes called the ant brain, can program your subconscious brain, the elephant brain. You program it. You kind of tell it what it needs to pay attention to. And that gets all dialed into your reticular activating system, from which all the external input data bombards, comes through that reticular activating system. And when you properly programmed your brain, it is put on alert, basically, that certain keywords, certain images will kind of elicit a different response because you've told your brain to do so. There's certain tricks to this, so we're going to get to that in a subsequent slide, so that your brain pays attention to it, and it brings it into the higher level thinking processes. So inputting, very, very important, because here's the thing, there's just too much data out there. So we got to set up the proper filters and mechanisms to weed out all the unnecessary data that just bombards our senses here in this 21st century at a rate that's never happened in the history of mankind. And we have to deal with this, right? Anyway, so that's the inputting. There's a lot you can do in your control as far as what gets inputted into your brain. Now we move on to processing. Higher level thinking. Higher level thinking, where you start to reorder information into more meaningful processes. It's not just a bunch of scattered information running around bouncing inside your head. It starts to get categorized, systematized. That's all part of processing. Now, I could go on for an hour on this teaching, and time does not permit for that. But one great tip for processing, all it's doing is further embedding very important concepts into your brain that will be necessary for implementation, or what we call application, is to draw pictures. When you learn something new, draw a picture of it. Better yet, draw a picture and then go turn and explain it to somebody. I guarantee you 100% that will further deepen your understanding and comprehension of the data that you're trying to make more meaningful, that you want to take into direct application. Take that for very important for you. Draw a picture, turn around and explain it to someone what you just learned. And yes, I'm talking about your e-commerce business here. All right, after processing, that's right, you're into application. So by understanding this learning process, you're going to be more effective as you move forward into your business. So I'm an educator. I kind of go deep into this kind of stuff because my goal is to help speed up and enhance your whole learning, application, and money-making efforts. Let's go on to tip number 4. Get fully dialed in. Here's Charles Schwab. Basically, he had this great breakthrough when he asked a mentor for, what would be the greatest tip that this mentor could provide him to make $1 million. It's going to sound so simple, but you ready? It actually ties into the last 2 slides. His mentor said, you know what you need to do? The night before, I want you to write down the absolute most important activities you need to do first thing tomorrow. And I want you to put them in order of priority. And I always tell my students, put it in the order of the highest income producing activities. People tend to avoid those. They'll find excuses to shuffle stuff around their desk, but they don't hit head on the activities that make them money. So for e-commerce arbitrage, that would be doing listings. Go finding products to source from Amazon and creating listings. That's called a money-making activity. Optimizing your listings. That's a money-making activity. Playing around on Facebook, chatting with friends, that's not a money-making activity. Okay? So Charles followed that advice. He became a millionaire. The other part about that is when you do that at night, you're programming your brain. While it goes to sleep, the subconscious goes to some mighty work order as it does this refiling. All night long, filing, just like filing cabinets up there in your brain, and it's just refiling information and putting into a more systematic, orderly fashion. You can program that. You have a say in it. The executive brain talks to the elephant brain and tells it what it needs to do. How? When you go to bed at night, you review your notes. Okay, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this. When you fall asleep, you're thinking about those activities. You're going to hit the ground running when you wake up in the morning. So how can you achieve maximum productivity in the shortest amount of time possible? That's a very powerful exercise that's been proven over and over again. It works. I had the good fortune, I grew up with a mom who she demonstrated that. She's always making lists. So I grew up with this modeled for me, and I'm very thankful for that. Another tip related to this for maximum productivity, I actually do an estimated time for my activities. I'll make my list the night before. That one will take 2 hours, that one 45. And then I set a timer. because I'm working for speed and efficiency. I'm a business athlete. I want to take what used to take me 2 hours and become so skilled and become a master of it that now I've reduced a 2-hour project or activity down to 45 minutes. Isn't that what you want to do as an executive? That's what you are. You want to strive to become an executive. Let's move on. Here's how you can set short-term goals and keep yourself accountable. These are practices within my primary training program called the Daily Marketing Coach. And my entire community still on a daily basis puts this into practice. EOD, most prominently, which stands for end of day. They report in accountability fashion. Let's say on our group page, this is for my Daily Marketing Coach, their EOD. And they, EOD, and then they list out everything they accomplished that day related to their business. SOD, I actually do that the night before, as mentioned in the previous slide. I write down what I'm going to do at start of day. And then you have your end of week summary. Let's give a recap. It's kind of like an evaluation, and how are you grading yourself? Did you come through with flying colors, get an A, or you're like, yeah, kind of a D performance here this week, not good. You basically hired yourself to run your business. So these are great tools to help keep you on track. Let's move on to tip number 5. I love this quote by W. Edwards Deming. Explain you that in just a moment. All right, so tip 5 is become systems-minded and data-driven. Here's what he says. If you can't describe what you're doing as a process, you don't know what you're doing. Now, does that not relate back to the chart, the schematic I just shared with you regarding the learning phase? Remember, it was the mindset. Then we went into inputting. Then we went into processing. And what I shared with you for processing is draw a picture as best you can. And that picture, it should detail what's called a system. First you do this, arrow. Then you do that, arrow. Then you do this, and then you do that. Okay, that's becoming systems oriented. Rather than you just spew out a whole bunch of sentences, can you draw a picture of it? And more importantly, can you turn around and explain it to someone and they go, oh yeah, oh, that makes perfect sense. That means you really understand the process and you know what you're doing. That's when you're systems minded. Now, data driven? Well, it's really true. A business is run by numbers. You have to know your numbers and your metrics, your sales performance, your profit margins, your conversion rates, visitors into sales, all these metrics. That's data. If you're like, oh, Anne, you see, I've never liked numbers. Well, then you're not going to be suited for business, actually. You have to learn to like numbers. So it's not really a matter of, well, my personality, it just doesn't lend itself well to numbers. I'm a creative person. I just like to create and throw paint on the canvas. Well, that's fine, but you also have to be numbers oriented. Now, it may be you're able to have a partnership where your personalities complement each other. Somewhat what's played out in my own company with my son, my husband, and I. We all complement each other. We actually, in our partnership, we each bring our own strengths and talents into the team. One more creative, one more numbers minded, etc. So if you really are adverse to numbers, I suggest you get a business partner who is really numbers focused. But if you can't do that, then I guess you're going to have to bootstrap, buckle up, and make it part of your mindset and accept that you're going to have to be data driven. So let's move on to tip number 6. Stay consistent over time. I have to admit, this is probably the most important tip of all. And yes, there's one more to go here. And that is, This is where I see the biggest point of failure. People just flat out don't stay consistent. I love this picture here because it reminds me of my days in high school when I was pursuing sports, specifically gymnastics. I was very weak and scrawny. And I knew that in order to learn any of those great and fancy tricks that I saw on TV in the Olympics, well, as much as I desired those tricks, I knew there was no way I was ever going to accomplish those until I built up my strength. So I had to hit the tedious grunt work first. Sit-ups, push-ups, pull-ups, leg lifts. All that stuff had to come first before I could even think of doing those really cool fancy tricks. I just had to suck it up and do it. That's kind of like in business. There's going to be some things that you don't like to do, but you just have to do them. In fact, my recommendation is get those done first, kind of like what Mom said, eat your green beans and then, eat your green beans and then you get dessert. It's the same in business. You're going to find there's some things that you just love to do and other things you don't. But you have to do them all. So why not get those icky, tedious ones out of the way first? Then you can go on to those dessert tasks, the ones that are fun and that you enjoy doing. But hold yourself accountable. I have to say, every day. I know for some folks, Sunday is an absolute out. That's cool. I'm fine with that. But I do know for some people, even that's dangerous. They have one day off, and before you know it, they're off down the slippery slope, giving up their business. I've seen it all. 10 years of working with hundreds of thousands of people. I've seen it. And I know people are very prone to dropping the ball. So this is why you might even put a chart up on the wall. Do chart hash marks, just like that. It is that important. I consider this the most important tip of all. It tends to win the game. You know, the proverbial hare, or I should say the turtle beating the hare. It's true. Tip number 7. This is the last one. I call it the grr factor. Dog to a bone. Don't touch my bone. Gonna get it done. Okay, that's me. That's my personality. It's the grr factor, and I really don't know how to account for it. I think it could be part personality driven. I'm just going to get it done. You try to pull this bone away from me, it ain't happening. It's just not going to happen because I am going to get this done. Now, maybe in part because I like a challenge, and I do. Because I know every time I accept a challenge and I overcome it, I'm that much stronger. Because you know what I know in business? There's always a new challenge on the horizon, whether I like it or not. And I'd rather be more prepared for the next challenge rather than always wimping out at any sign of hardship or difficulty, which for most people are just throw them out of their buggy and onto the side of the road. Okay, business doesn't accommodate that. There's no room for it in the business world. There's no, it just doesn't happen because it's the real world. It's the real world. It's the business world. And it's the way it really works. You know, I'll give you an example. Let's say you decide to get lazy and schlocky with your customer follow-up. And you're not answering their emails when they have a request. You're like, I don't feel like it. Okay, it'll come back to bite you in the butt. And I'll tell you how. Amazon or eBay will take note of it. And, you might not reach power seller status because you weren't living up to the expectations. You weren't being a professional. So this is why I say embrace and accept the challenges. Jump over those hurdles. It's going to make you more fit for the game of business, to be suited up as a business athlete. Because you're in this for the long run. Don't be someone who says, I'm going to give this a shot. Because I'm going to tell you something. Of all the things that I've taught and trained on over the last 10 years, I have never seen so many people successful at e-commerce, or I should say marketing online via e-commerce. Nothing comes remotely close to it. Absolutely nothing. And furthermore, it's just going to grow so enormous, so big. You have virtually no idea right now the enormous potential that lies ahead of you. in so many different ways. You just can't even imagine them. There are virtually thousands of different ways to make money in this enormous e-commerce space. So I want you to stick with it, the GER factor. Make that your identity. So please know we are here to support your dreams and ambitions. Just like was the case for myself when I first came online, I had the good fortune to have a mentor, a sponsor who was able to put me under their wing and help me grow, flourish, and reach my own dreams and ambitions. So what I want to do next is just share with you some of the additional resources that we have to help support you. So I've got a private Facebook group page that's been set up to help our members get questions answered 24/7 from our leadership community. So it's called Ann Sieg's Renegade Community, and it is a true help and be help community. I have actually managed this community for over 4 years, and many leaders have come through the ranks, so to speak, and they are incredible. And they stay here because they love the platform and the culture and the environment that I put together here. So I'm going to give you the information. It is complimentary. So again, members are supported 24/7 through my high-level leadership team and our private community Facebook group page. So here's Becky saying, welcome. There is no better support system. So this is the link to join my community page. It's joinannsteam.com. Please note you will need your username or order ID as well as your password, and that is referring to your purchase of e-commerce arbitrage. Now, let's say for some reason you misplaced that, and then you would just simply email into our support desk, and the instructions are given right there on this page, and we'll be happy to assist you because it's very important we get you into the support community. You're going to need it. All right. Now, I also want to encourage you to join our High Touch, High Help e-commerce university, and it costs $2.97. Now, in there, and I'm not going to have much time to go through all the details here, but to sum it up, what you're going to receive as part of that $2.97, about the equivalent of what you would pay for a McDonald's breakfast biscuit. All right. So you fill your tummy with a little McDonald's breakfast biscuit, or you sacrifice that money that you would have spent on a biscuit and you spend it on your education instead. So you're going to receive our monthly advanced time-sensitive training. So for example, at the time of this recording, we just had a phenomenal training with one of our master consultants, and it was on the April updates. Specifically for eBay sellers. We also have, as part of our university, our weekly eBay hot seats, which are listing reviews. So that means you can show up, raise your hand and say, hey, look at my listing, would you please? And then one of our expert trainers will review your eBay listing. So this, by the way, ends up being about 20 cents per group coaching call. And then we have just a weekly group coaching call where we answer any and all questions. It could be some just time management issues that you're having, or, how do I source from Amazon more effectively, or just kind of anything and everything. But of course, all centered around building an eBay dropshipping business. And then we also have our weekly accountability coaching, mostly for the fact that for a lot of folks who are what I call evolving entrepreneurs, is they tend not to have the self-management skill sets that are needed to reach success. Showing up on your workstation, at your computer, 2 hours a day, or whatever you've structured out for yourself. So bar none, this is actually the biggest challenge I see with people, is they don't know how to be accountable to themselves. So I'll show you where you can access the university is on step 4. And you'll see a repeat of everything that I just mentioned, and then you scroll down. It's $2.97. That is for your first month. So yes, it is a monthly training program. And then it's $37 a month after the first 30 days. So we call this a trial. And this is for us to prove to you that your whole 20 cents from each group coaching call is a good investment for you. What we call ROI, return on investment. So when you make that first sale and you've earned back your $2.97, you go, bam, this thing paid off. So that's called ROI, and that's how you want to look at these kind of decisions. All right, you also have the opportunity to access a one-time coaching session or a full coaching package. These are just optional, by the way. This is all in keeping with my mission to help 1,000 people make $10,000 a month. So most of my high-income producers have access professional coaching as part of their journey to, that's supposed to say, success. And you can access more information about coaching in our left navigation bar. So let me show you where that's at. Right here, one-on-one coaching. So I have had a certification program in place for the last 4 years. So they had to have been certified by me, which is a pretty arduous path, and have reached in the field results. So you have that available to you. And then finally, in conclusion, should you have any questions anytime during your training, you can't find a link, whatever it happens to be, we have an amazing, amazing customer care manager. Her name is Lisa, and she will be more than happy to assist you. And that email address is support@renegadesupport.com. And as I say, my customer care team will be happy to assist you. So in conclusion, I hope you get the feeling and the sense that finally, you're in the right place and you've got a place where you can be fully supported. Because I got to tell you, that is a rare find. So again, welcome, and make sure you access the resources, and then on to your next training module.